So hi everybody. Hi everybody at home. It is Wednesday, January 13th, 2021. The hellscape that is 2020 is behind us. This meeting is being held fully remote as the emergency order from Governor Charlie Baker. There's Jeremy. Hold on. Jeremy. I'm just rambling anyway. There's Jeremy. This meeting is fully remote. The emergency order from the governor allows the limitation of social meetings, and obviously there was legislation passed for board meetings to allow remote board meetings through emergency declaration. So this is being broadcast over ECAT. The information and Zoom meeting information is also obviously presented on the agenda so people can join. Only those of us on the panelist side can actually be speaking. But if people have questions or if they want to raise their hands, they can. And obviously we will address those as we go through. If someone joins and asks a question, I will give you all $5. So I think that's my quota for jokes for the night. So tonight we have a pretty simple meeting. It actually made sense. Jen and I had a conversation a little while ago that it probably makes sense to just kind of do a refresher meeting anyway. We have a new member who you all have actually, I think, met in person, even though you're met with masks, or most of you have, who I have not because I was gone. But
can I just say, Patrick, it's really nice to see Shireen's face without a mask.
Not a mask on.
Hi, Jamie. Thank you.
You're welcome. Good to see you.
It's good to see you. Thank you for stepping up and throwing your hat in the ring to jump into this craziness.
Thank you.
A lot of what we're going to cover tonight will definitely obviously give you a snapshot of what it means, and if you have questions, stop us. The expectation is this isn't going to go too long. There's not a huge amount of stuff on the schedule, but it's a good starting point for us for the year, so it can help refresh everybody and then also clue you in on some of the things that are going to be going on and give you a good idea what the workload is, so that if you do decide to run when this comes up again, hey, this is essentially the gig. We all sit in our houses and we chat, and people laugh politely at jokes that I tell that aren't funny. It's pretty much the same thing every day. So, having said that, I'm just going to go through the agenda itself and just explain what I meant behind most of it, so you guys are all on the same page. Obviously, the meeting minutes we're going to approve. The only one we currently have is from October. Stacy is going to go back through and do the one from November. She hit or miss sometimes with how ECAT plays it. So she's had some issues in the past of getting the actual audio to play correctly. So she's going to go back and do that one. We'll probably take up that one at our next meeting. Obviously, the meeting minutes for tonight, she's recording now. We'll try to do all that at the same time. I think the joint meetings are the only other meetings we've had. So I think those aren't on us to do meeting minutes for, if I remember correctly, but if not, I'll reach out to the select board just to make sure, but I think we're good otherwise. I think it's this one, it's the November meeting and the October meeting, and then we're caught up. So TBD, we'll go through and vote on that. There's DePietro, literally right on time as per usual. We are going to go through, hi Mike, welcome. We're going to go through the budget assignments. There he is. We're going to talk about what that means, what the impact is going to be, and sort of what the expectation is, so that everyone's on the same page again. We had sort of a shortened cycle of it last year for some reason. I don't know what happened drastically in the world that changed the way we actually, dealt with people. But this year, the conversation that Jen and I had with Connor, we've got some good insight as to what his timeline is. He also shared that budget book. I don't know if anyone's had a chance to look at that yet, but that has a good time frame as well. I'll bring up my screen and share that just so we can have that and be all on the same page. If there's any other boards or committees that have met that we have reports from, Jamie and I were obviously just in the school planning committee meeting just tonight. Not a dramatic amount going on other than bids, but I'll do a quick snapshot. Jamie can fill in any gaps that I leave behind. Does anyone else have anything they want to talk about that boards, committees, etc., that they've been part of?
I just wanted to speak to the fire department and police department, and okay. Timothy can elaborate a little bit, but this weekend, the fire department is putting on a basically COVID testing, at Station 3, which is a really big deal. And I'm sure a lot of you have read about it already, but this is a great ramp up to mass vaccinations if and when they come to town. And the police department is also coordinating with the fire department. So I talked to Keith Boone, our deputy chief, briefly about that as well. So I'm just excited about the work that these guys are doing, and again, being so forward leaning on this, putting on this testing clinic is just a great way for them to figure out how they're going to handle traffic and flow and keeping people in their cars moving through the station. And the way they've already begun to organize it and lay it out is amazing. So Timothy, maybe you could just say a couple things.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. It's actually it's good that you brought up. It's a big team effort on the part of the town, from from town hall to the police department, the board of health, DPW, fire department, police department. It's actually kind of an all department event, getting everything going there. So it's going to be occurring this Saturday. I think they put out the public notice on Monday. And this one's while it's considered, a medium scale testing, I think we're doing over 100 tests for the public. It's like you said, it's getting us ready for the next steps, which would be mass vaccination. So we'll be doing some of our own in-town vaccination for the governor's plan for phase 1, part B. For first responders also coming up this week and next month as well. So a lot of good things happening. It is a big lift, and just a big shout out to everybody involved. But definitely stay tuned, because I think it's the beginning of the book and not the end of the chapter. So we'll keep you updated as it keeps going.
Yeah, and please thank everyone on the department for us. All the hard work that all the frontline first responders are doing. So thank you very much. I will,
and I can say I'm very grateful that the town's supporting us doing it. It's what we're happy to do. We like to get out there and do that for the public, and it's a great way to really. It's been a tough year for a lot of these guys, because we're on the front lines doing it, but at the same time you're kind of reserved in what you can do, and this is just another way for us to instead of being reactive, to go actually in a proactive mode for the first time, and really since 2020 kicked off. So. Getting that proactive response is a big deal for a lot of people, and hopefully we get to kick this thing's butt.
Awesome. That's a great update. I appreciate you guys sharing that. That's fantastic. Where'd my thing go? So that's pretty much it. We'll open it up to obviously comments at the end. The only other piece of business that we have tonight, I'm going to just skip this to the front of the line just because it doesn't really matter. But just a quick reminder for everybody that the campaign finance reports are due on the 20th of this month. Generally, for the most of you, it's probably just a signature process, unless you obviously have funds sitting around in your various different accounts that you may or may not have used. But just keep that in mind. I am unsure of what the penalties are if you miss that, but I'm sure they're draconian. So quick reminder just to make sure you get that squared away.
Danielle gets mean.
Oh no. With that said, let's dive in. Let's just do the meeting minutes piece first. Has everyone reviewed it? Are there any questions? Does anyone have any statements or comments to add to that? And if not, we can go right into the approval process. I see none. I always forget this, so I'm going to remember it this time. I'm going to go down my list of people. So could I please have a motion to accept the meeting minutes from October the 14th, 2020?
So moved.
Thank you, Michael. Can I have a second?
Second.
Heard two. Was that Tim or was that Davis and Jen?
It was me, and I don't know.
There was several of us, I think. Yeah.
All of you seconded it. Great.
Everyone.
So I'm going to go down the list. Strain, just so you're aware, the way we do this is it's typically it's last name and then yes or no. Since you were not at this meeting, you can obviously abstain because you have no idea if these are accurate or not. Unless you watched it on TV. Are you one of those like extra credit people? No. Okay. Shocking. So I'm just going to go down the list, and then everyone will just it's just a voice vote, but that way we call it out in the context of the meeting. So, Stacy.
Yes.
DePietro.
Yes.
My list is not complete. Stebbins.
Abstain.
Were you not there? Oh, you were out that day, right?
That's the October one, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was not there.
Healy.
Yes.
D'Amelio.
Yes.
Writing as fast as I can. Mimosi.
Oop, I think
You're on mute, Timothy.
Mimosi, yes.
There we go. Is that everybody? My list keeps moving. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then me, Helen, yes. Okay. Thank you all. All right, so that's pretty much the only vote we have tonight, so that was easy. All right, diving into the chat of the matter is the departmental budget assignments. So, and Jen, I'm gonna rely on you to obviously speak to this as well because you were part of that same conversation with Connor. But effectively, the discussion that we had with Connor was about what the timeline is for this year, what the expectation is, and then I wanted to obviously go back through the budget assignments so you guys can understand or remember exactly who it is you're already assigned for. But top level, it's in a typical year, everything starts really in the January timeframe, right? You get your prelim. Oh, you know what? I should share this. Where am I? This one. Let me know if this comes up for you guys. Can you see that? Yes. Okay. So effectively, we're here, right? We're in the December, January through the February timeframe, and typically this is the time that, as you can see, the prelim budget starts to get put together. There's obviously presentations around where things are standing, how those numbers are starting to come together, but effectively the various different budgets of all the different departments are starting to get finalized. They're starting to be pulled into the single document for an expectation that sometime in March, we're going to be looking at sort of that first real draft. And so this is a decent guide as to how this is going to lay out from that point forward, because obviously post-March, there's going to be ongoing meetings. There's the various different public hearings that are had about the budget itself. And for the FinCom itself, that's usually when we have the various different department heads come in and give effectively that real sort of state of the state discussion as to what's going on or where they see things shaking loose. A couple years back, I'll just stop sharing this because we pretty much got everything we did. A couple years back, we had previous vice chair or co-chairs and the board itself come up with the idea of doing a little bit more of an outreach and engagement ahead of time. And so to effectively say, here's the various different budget departments you have that you're assigned to as one of the members of the FinCom. Can you please proactively reach out to them roughly around the time frame of that prelim budget being first presented and start to ask, hey, what do you see? What's an outlier? What do you see coming down the road? Is there anything that we should be prepared for? Anything we can help with? Anything we can move the chains on now, as opposed to in the June or September timeframe where we're down to brass tacks, we're actually voting on these things. And so that's kind of the point of what we're going to talk about today about the budget assignments and sort of the timelines, et cetera. Jen, is there anything else you would add to that based on what we were talking about with Connor? I'm trying to do high level, but I don't know if there's anything more constructive.
I think that covers it well for the most part. I think we are starting the department outreach slightly later this year than we did last year.
Right.
But that obviously is not a surprise. And I'm sure there'll be questions that come up around kind of what is involved in the outreach and what you might expect. When, I think we can all speak to different experiences from it's a quick, hey, everything's good, quick overview to maybe a presentation that you have with the person who's with the departments that you are the liaison for. So it really depends greatly. There's a massive range because as we go through, as Patrick goes through the list, we'll see that there's a lot of groups that are very small. There's not a lot of movement. And then groups like DPW and schools, there's a lot more movement. So, but yeah, I think we can just kind of take those questions as they come along or explain as they arise.
Yep, I agree. So we'll pause there. Are there any questions before we dive in? I have one question, which is, in this time last year, we were obviously, several of us have gone through this once, twice, 3 times, 6 times, whatever it might be. But at this time last year, Jeremy, you were relatively fresh on here. Did you go through a budget sort of communication cycle? I do not recall off.
Yes, I did.
Okay. And Davis, obviously you've been down there. Mike, I think you just didn't do it, but whatever. But so the conversation itself is that there's options. I'm going to bring up let me pull the departmental piece up, this idea, and we'll use this as the way to, why is it not letting me do my entire desktop? Can you guys see my Google Drive sheet? Yes.
We see your desktop.
You see a
Nice sand dune.
sand dune, a pretty sand dune? Great.
Oh, something flashed.
Can't tell him I hate using Zoom. Don't tell the shareholders. Let's try this again. I'll just do the Chrome browser. How about now?
Yep, you're good.
Second time's the charm. And I'm in tech. This is awful. So effectively, this is it, right? So we've broken up, and I say we, I mean the powers that be. This has been done a long time before now, but the departments, the variety of different departments that are in this budget book that are broken out in an incredibly exhaustive detail as to what each individual line item of the budget actually contains. These are all of them, and they're broken out into clusters. So that effectively it's how do we combine these so that there's not someone like a Tim who gets the very enviable job of doing the school budget, the number one biggest line item of the entire budget season. He doesn't really need 7 others. We're going to give him that and Southeastern. They're coordinated together. It makes sense to put those together. It also doesn't overload him with something. So to that point, I'm going to go down the list so we're all on the same page again. Jeremy, first and foremost, selectmen all the way down through town clerk. These are relatively smaller ones. There's not a huge amount going on. We kind of have a better idea as to what's happening. But the idea behind this, mostly for Terrain, is that this is, you can reach out to these various different departments and you can essentially say what I said before, like, hey, how are things going? Where are things standing? What can I do as a member of the finance committee to help you or find additional details? Is there anything we can do to help offset a sudden awful thing that comes up? The other piece I'll say about it in this context is that oftentimes, 90% of the time, it's probably a no, right? 90% of the time, it's probably a not really. This is as expected, right? These various different departments are really good at what they're doing, and they understand what's at stake, and they're doing a great job of getting this down to a razor thin budget every year. But the offer is always there, and it allows us to be that much more informed, kind of selfishly, ahead of time, right? So, Jeremy, you know yours. Christina, who is not here tonight, she's still having a few health items that she's going through, but she said she'll be back next time. She's doing great. She says hi. She has these 3, accountant through assessors. Jamie has the other sort of big ticket, which is police, dispatch, fire, and ambulance. We've got Jen with the third one, DPW, and it's all its environments. Mike with water, waste recycling, and data. Davis with some of the inspectional pieces, and then obviously Veterans Council on Aging, Board of Health. Myself with is this me? No, this is Shireen. This is the one that you actually inherited. This was the one that was the person that you are replacing on the board, which is debt and interest, employee benefits, and other general government. This one's a barn burner. Let me tell you, other general government, whew, watch out. And then I have the most amazing one, which is library and planning, which is just an excuse for me to call Uma and just talk about, great fiction that's come out recently and then pretend I'm doing something, valuable. And then we obviously talked about Tim. So typically at this point in time in the year, we say, does anyone want to trade? And you all try to trade with me and I tell you no. Does anyone want to trade with anyone other than me? Or does anyone want to potentially put their hat in the ring for another cluster? We always put it out there. Typically people stay pretty close to the guns because they've had that engagement, but it's there. If you guys want to throw your hat out there, please let me know.
And just to remind people too that with the election coming up and possible changes and whatnot, that this discussion will be happening again in probably April, May.
Right. It's flexible enough that we do have people that obviously they jump in. Sometimes they run, sometimes they don't. Contingent. If that flux changes, then obviously we readjust as needed. But if anyone has something that is an absolute desire for them, feel free to say it now. I'll take some notes, and if it comes back up again in that time frame, we can obviously look back at it again.
I did have one question on it. With the dispatch line item, where that used to be an entire section, I think it's been relegated now to the SIMREC regional.
Right.
I don't know where that line item got placed in the 22 budget.
I don't know either. I think there's still a rollout. Jamie, do you have any insight on that? Do you know offhand? Because you're always closer to it than we are.
Yeah, not yet, but I will find out.
Okay. I feel like there's still some lingering, which could be either, I don't know if it's like lease associations or previous sort of entanglements that were already there. I feel like there's something that's still floating around out there, but I think it's a known entity and it's probably just going to be a reduction. But that's a good call out. Thank you. Anybody putting theirs up for bid?
I just have a question. I know in the spring we considered breaking up school or making that 2 people. Is that gone? I have no interest. I'm just curious. I don't want schools. It's all him. Who's got it?
I think. Well, Tim, let us know what you think. Like, I feel like Southeastern is not. I feel like school is the ticket, and Southeastern is like a rounding error on top of that. That's
So, I mean, the Southeastern is kind of almost set mathematics where you can gauge where you're going to be by the enrollment of the students, and the contributions have historically been, again, I can't predict the future of where it's going to be, but historically have been the minimum required. So while we do see some fluctuation in that, it's usually a standard increase of around 4%. So so that one's kind of more of a set, and we can take a look at how many students enrolled into the school from our district and go from there. So that one's a little bit easier because you can just meet with them, get fixed numbers, and move forward. The contributions, however, again, were historically one way, but 2020 was a historical year that might change things. So after meeting with him with the upcoming meetings with them, I'm sure we'll be able to better gauge that with some fair reliability. The school budget itself is quite large. It is probably something that, if we decide to break it up with a smaller cluster into 2 pieces, I think that's doable. It's carryable by one person. I've been doing it for a couple years now. We're very fortunate in that our school committee and Dr. Cabral really break it down to terms that are easy for me to digest. But again, with the way 2020 rolled out, the way that's had an impact on 2021 and even into 2022 fiscal, I would say the environment is cloudy at best because it's changing day to day with government planning and DESI rulings and those kinds of things as they come down the pike. So it's one of those things where the budget is kind of drastically changing week to week. And if anybody's been up to date on their school committee meetings, I'm sure you've seen that as well. So it's big enough to split if we decide as a committee to do that. I think it's reasonable. However, if everybody's comfortable where they're at, I'm more than happy to stay there and keep on trucking on too. Because again, like I said, Dr. Cabral is always extremely thorough in her presentations and usually breaks it down to digestible terms.
Tim, you brought up a good point. If there was a split, is there anything that's even what would be like a expected dividing line for that? Is there something within the budgetary sort of breakout itself that you could say is like, well, this is where you would actually, this is I don't know, resources, this is salaries, like, is it something like that, or is it?
No, so I think there's a couple of things with the school budget that makes it a little different. One is when it's presented throughout the year, it's usually in a coded binder. So some of it's kind of just doing a little bit of extra leg research on trying to find out what those codes are and where they correlate to the line items. But I think the majority of it is really just the communication, getting in touch with the school committee and Dr. Cabral, as opposed to maybe some of the other, I believe when I first got on, I had the library cluster. I think it was cluster 8. And that was a kind of a once a fiscal year meeting to go over the budget, where usually with Dr. Cabral, she's kind enough to meet with me multiple times throughout the year. Usually quarterly is what I try to achieve with her. So it's just more meeting time. And I think that extra communication piece is what makes it work. Again, meeting quarterly, I don't think is outside the realm of possibility for one person to do. However, sometimes, as you know, the reason we have committees is so we have multiple ears and multiple minds banging away at a budget. I don't think taking half again, I think more eyes and more ears is always advantageous. So, I think it's good. I try my best to present what I can from them. And like I said, Dr. Cabral is usually very thorough and open about our communication as well. But I think that trying to split the budget into pieces probably wouldn't work. But again, having more people in communication more often is probably an acceptable way to approach it.
I like that idea. I hadn't considered that aspect of it. I thought it was more like divide and conquer. But in this case, if you had multiple people essentially running the same channel, it's sort of like how we do some of the subcommittees, right? So it's like Jamie and I on the school committee, the school planning committee, for instance.
And Patrick, can I just say too, I'm gonna toot Tim's horn, because if anyone else just tried to step in right now, he's done more than just the quarterly meetings. He's toured the schools. He's gotten firsthand impressions of, what the school committee and Dr. Cabral are working on. So he does a lot, and he's modest about it. So just adding another person to do just that, be another set of eyes and ears, and to be in the schools, as much as Tim was, I think would behoove the next person that comes behind Tim.
Mm-hmm.
So Patrick,
Why don't we throw that out there? If anyone else wants to join forces. Oh, do you have a question? Go ahead. Sorry.
so I was going to say that I am available to partner with anyone else on any of the clusters that needs a second set of eyes.
I'm having an evil sort of villain thought here. Maybe the best solution to this entire scenario is we've got a new member, and we've got Tim with the biggest ticket item that you could possibly imagine. Maybe that's the partnership. Maybe we team you guys up for the engagement. There's a little bit of a, hey, this is how the school budget does it. And then honestly, Sheree, when you go back and look at your own cluster, you'd be like, oh, this is what it's like not to work for a living. Okay, got it. But that way you can obviously get some exposure. If you do decide to run in the upcoming election as well, it just gives you more understanding of what that budget looks like and more understanding of sort of what the workload here is. I think I'm using all of your ideas, and I'm going to just claim it was my own and just put it out there. So if you're interested in that, Tim,
Yes, I am.
It would be a good combination.
Yes, I am.
Because again, if I look at your current assignment, like debt and interest, employee benefits, and other general government, you'd call Connor, and it would be a relatively light conversation because if any budget's going to be pretty well buttoned up, it's going to be his, right? So maybe
Okay.
maybe that's a good step.
Okay, great. Thank you.
That's smart.
Thank you, Tim.
Hey, thank you, and I appreciate jumping on it. When I first got appointed, I got moved from the library to the school with a little bit of apprehension. So I think but I will say it was a trial by fire because there's always a major movement in the school budget every year.
Yeah.
So it definitely gets you involved in the ins and outs of town budgeting very quickly. But from what I've seen is on the resume so far, I think you're well suited for it. So welcome on.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Awesome. Any other comments on that? I was gonna sort of kick it to Jen without telling her I was kicking it to her to talk about what the actual sort of what the timeline typically looks like, or like what your experience, Jen, has been in this process. Just to get an understanding of sort of what the expectation is with DPW. Obviously, there's a lot of moving pieces there. I would love for you to just share sort of what not last year that was quirky, what maybe a normal sort of budget year typically looks like, and what the expectation of timing and whatnot was in your estimation.
Yeah, so to give everyone some insight, basically there's a point where Connor will tell us, go ahead, go forth and contact the department contacts for the groups that are in your cluster. So using my example, I have DPW, and with that, all of those groups that are on the spreadsheet roll up to Dave Field. So he's my point of contact. And I think it was like October or November, maybe November-ish in years past, but it doesn't matter. We basically wait for the green light from Connor. Don't go until he says go, and reach out with an email. If we've done this a couple times, it's a, hey, how are you? Just checking in, and how do you want to connect on any changes? For first time, just introduce yourself. They'll know that they'll expect you. So it's not going to be a shock. And if you do any trouble connecting, you can reach out to Patrick or myself, and we can help with that. But I don't think anybody's ever had a problem reaching their departmental contact, to my knowledge, not that I've ever heard of. So in my experience, I've reached out to Dave, and every year up till this year, and I don't expect we'll meet in person this year, but we've actually done an in-person meeting every year. And he's given me kind of a presentation of the DPW overall. So it's a walkthrough of the various groups within his organization, and just kind of a snapshot of what they're doing, what their challenges are, how they're using the resources they have. It also gives a really good snapshot of where we're really, really strained and where some of the risks are looking ahead. When we had the joint meetings, and I assume it's still going to be March this year with the select board, it's very similar to the presentation that you'll see that he'll give during those joint meetings from department heads. So with that, the unique thing with the DPW, and I don't know that any other groups have this, is the DPW. I actually do a snow and ice report along with it. So our report comes out after a snow event, which may be a storm or maybe an ice event, etc. And even with the DPW, is basically, goes out into the road and does any kind of preparation for an event that involves icing, sanding, brining, etc. Is tracked and reported on. And I actually have that I'll report on. Can we do that now at Patrick as well to give an example? Or but yeah, so I do that anytime we have a meeting, give the update on what the latest was, because that's a separate budget that's tracked as part of the DPW as well. And from there, we just report back to this group and give a deeper understanding. A lot of times questions come up among the group, and it's really helpful to have someone within the finance committee who can share insights from their department head, not really speaking on behalf of, but sharing insights. And if questions come up, we can always be the one person to go back and ask for clarifications, as opposed to having a bunch of people reach back out with various questions. So it's really just an opportunity to go deeper so we can all go broader. Does that kind of summarize what you're thinking?
Yeah, you can definitely go through the snow and ice report right now if you want to, just as an example.
Sure.
I liked your point about the reaching back out point as well. That when we get down to the actual budgetary meetings and they do the presentations, it's you're seeing how the sausage is made. So it's a little eye opening to see all the various different trade offs and considerations that go into it. But then it's a good call out, Jen, that at that point, if something is going on, if we need additional clarification, typically when we do our budgetary meetings as the FinCom on Wednesday nights, those presentations sometimes they come back and they ask for additional clarification, or there's warrant articles that are associated, or the capital budget requests will come in, and all those things are coming in front of us. Having that point of contact, like, hey, Tim, can you go ask Dr. Cabral X? Like, that makes it a much more streamlined process as well. As a good call.
Yeah, I think a lot of us have had to do that, and it's been, I think, a very effective approach to making sure that we respect the time, and that we probably, because of our interactions with the department heads, we know how to think through the questions and whatnot. And I've had to do it a couple of times with DPW when the brining program started. For example, there were a lot of questions at first about, oh wait, what is this? And technical details about brining and why we were doing it and how it rolled up to the numbers and stuff. So that's just an example of a discussion we had in FinCom. I went back, talked to Dave, and got a really quick answer, explaining all the questions that I then brought to the next meeting. So it really does make it easy, clean, and clear.
The amount of time we spent discussing brining, because we all just nerd out about it every time it comes up, is just it's. So yeah, so do you want to do the snow and ice report? We'll dodge over to your board and committee presentation if you would.
Sure, this is a quick one, but we have had a couple of events this year, as you guys know. So just to kind of give some insight, I am one of the people who gets a report from the DPW anytime there's a snow event that updates the what they call the snow and ice summary report. And typically in any given meeting, I will share an update so folks can start to see the progression of how the winter is affecting our snow and ice budget. So this year, so far, we've had 3 events, which breaks down to a spot sanding event, a major sanding event, and then a plowing event. I believe the plowing event these are all probably pretty memorable for this year. The total cost so far is $139,140.76. Just to give some insight, the total budget for snow and ice for this year is $493,700. So we have currently have 354 and some change to get us through the rest of the winter season. And based on how the DPW tracks the winter season, the unofficial start of the season is December 1st, and the unofficial end is the 31st of March. So with that, we are pretty close to a third of the way into the snow and ice season. And I'm not going to jinx us and say what could happen after March 31st, but we all know it's New England. So, but as of right now, if you project out those costs, we're at $495, so slightly over the budget, but that's actually barely. And even at this point, we are kind of in the part of the year where things could ramp up and this could change quickly. But the other thing to keep in mind is that this number factors in a lot of materials and other pieces that are bought ahead of time. So they calculate the cost per inch as they go along in the season, and typically that cost per inch will start to go down because we've bought the equipment ahead of time. We've bought not the equipment, we bought the parts and supplies. We've bought the materials that are stockpiled, and they do replenish them. But that number does start to go down, and if we have major events, it might trickle back up. But um, one of the big things that the DPW has done a lot of work over the past, for a very long time, constant work, trying to hone in on opportunities to save town resources in terms of financial resources. So the brining we were just talking about is one of the efforts that's been done to shift the way overtime is used, and it's made it so that they can be more strategic about how they use staff to address upcoming snowstorms especially during times that normally would be heavier overtime. Now, I don't want to say that there isn't overtime. To be clear right now, there's been 256 hours of regular DPWs and 387 of overtime and 545 of contractor hours. But by brining during regular hours and getting ahead of that, they have been able to realize some savings when it comes to overtime and contractor hours. So the brining program, from what I've understood the past couple of years, has been very successful and a successful addition to the town's management of snow and ice. So with that, the other thing is, let's see here, typical snow to date, we would normally have 10.14 inches, and we are at 5.16. So we are a little behind the ball in snow. So barring none of us have a crystal ball and know what was going to happen, but it's always fun to start watching these reports come through and then start to compare them meeting to meeting and see how the numbers change. So it's kind of one of our FinCom fun activities. So yeah, that's what comes along with the DPW, is working with Dave on understanding how those pieces affect the town budget, which, DPW is obviously a really important and substantial part of the budget, but also reporting out on the snow and ice. That's it.
Can you imagine if you went back and told your 13-year-old self that someone telling you about what's happening in the town you live in with the snow and ice totals, you'd be totally jazzed about?
I know, right? I seriously just sit down and plot it at the end of the season and nerd out on it.
It is just cool.
I have some weird hobbies too.
We know.
I still have some weird hobbies, so.
So I think that's a good segue. So are there any other reports from boards, committees, subcommittees that we want to engage? I quickly looked around. I don't think the vast majority haven't met. Has budget sub met? No?
Or at least they haven't invited me if they did.
And didn't tell me they were meeting, so no.
We are covered, right? I have to ask Connor if we're covered for all subcommittee appointments. I think we are. Yeah, okay. I just want to make sure.
I think we are. I'm audit, Davis is capital, Jeremy and Mike are budget, and you and Jamie are school committee, right?
Yeah, I just want to make sure, because I don't think John had any, but I wanted to double check. And Christina doesn't have any yet either, right?
I don't think so. No, Patrick, am I recalling correctly that Connor did not give us the green light yet? We're still waiting for that. It might be closer to next month.
For contacting?
Yes.
No, nothing yet. He will let us know. He'll probably send a note to everyone, or to me and Jen. We'll send it around where you can start to reach out. All the relevant contact information is obviously on the website, so you can easily get to the Easton stuff and find out who you're calling this year if there's any confusion or question. But yeah, I think it's going to be closer to the end of February. His preliminary is early March, I think he said. Maybe. I think he has an absolute deadline for early March, but I think his goal is obviously to do it early, and then we can start to engage.
Yeah, and I think what's a little different this year is in the years where it's earlier, we were kind of we may have made contact as the preliminary process was going, but things are we're in a very different situation this year and last year than years previous. So
yeah, a lot of the numbers are still sort of theoretical when it comes down to what what state aid was going to be and what Baker and everybody else are going to sign off on. So that's getting solidified now. So hopefully we'll have the go light so that I can have an excuse to call Uma and talk to her about, whatever's come out in the last 6 months for good ebooks. Okay. So to that point,
should we also just let folks know that once the preliminary is done, there'll be presentations to this group from Connor first. So he'll start coming to our meetings and giving us updates on budget. There'll be a couple of meetings like that before we have those joint meetings with the select board that have historically happened in March, but I don't know what the plan will be this year.
Yeah, I feel like they're going to be a little pushed. I wouldn't be shocked if they're end of March or even further, just depending on timing.
Yeah.
But also, I think the sort of bad thing, and yet the also silver lining, is that there's not a lot of things that are moving right now because we're on the as limited as you can get. So we'll see what that comes out with. Okay. The only committee meeting that I've actually only been able to attend one in the recent past for the school planning committee. Jamie, have you been attending? I'm sure you've been attending more than me. Do you want to give a quick snapshot of where we are?
Yeah, sure. As Patrick mentioned, tonight was really just a really nice overview of some of the graphics design work that's been going on, and in particular, the really nice ramp that we have going up from the first floor to the second floor, and all of the Blanche Ames, basically everything to do with Blanche Ames, from her caregiving and her, ingenuity and her, invention, and obviously her love of horticulture and what do you call bird? She was, I guess horticulture is the big one. Anyway, so we got to see some of what the graphic design team of Perkins Eastman put together based on the input they were given from the students at Oliver Ames. So we've got this incredible community involvement, and the way it came out, it's magnificent. And one of the things that came up, and I couldn't speak because my mic wouldn't work, as Patrick saw me probably trying to talk to everybody 7 times. It came out that we should be giving the community updates to the progress that's happening, because I don't know about you guys, it came up in that meeting, but I personally have also talked to probably 10 different people in town, families, and who have no idea that the project's still moving forward. They just think it all died with COVID. And, just the opposite, right? We're on budget and we're on time. We're on plan right now. We're going through the bid process right now. That should be concluded at the end of February, which means we break ground as early as March, April. And then we build through October of 22, which means we still have a goal of moving in students in January of 23. So it's pretty exciting. And so far, all indicators are that we're going to stay on track. A big reason too is that we had an incredible number when we sent it out to bid. The return was phenomenal. So we had a lot of people quoting, and we had a really a strong team, both part of Perkins Eastman and then members of the school planning committee that were on vetting these contractors. And they've done a wonderful job. And I think they've gotten it down to, Patrick might know the number. I don't know if it was a handful left to decide from. But again, that decision is going to be made, I think, towards the end of February. So a lot of great things going on. But one of the things they talked about doing, knowing that it would be nice to keep the community informed of the milestones, is doing a video maybe every couple weeks that highlights interior plans, exterior plans, the timeline, and the fact that we're on budget, and in fact we're slightly under budget, which is nice. So all that, and I think that would be wonderful. Just quick little video segments that people can tune in and at their leisure and get a really good idea of where we're at.
Thank you, Jimmy. To that point, thank you for bringing that up. The other thing that they asked at the end, so this video idea is definitely going forward as something that they're interested in. But if anyone has any other suggestions as a way that they can think of that's a creative way, obviously during a pandemic, to get the word out to people, to sort of to echo and paraphrase what Dr. Cabral was saying. She was like, you know what, there's a lot of people out there that could use some good news, right? And the progress and the impact of what the school is and what this school is going to look like, and the interactivity and the design and all the things that are going into this are obviously huge aspects. And frankly, it's pretty impressive what they pulled together. Like, we've done a great job in picking a team who then in turn have done a significantly incredible job of putting these pieces together. So if anyone has any suggestions, you can send them to me, you can send them to Jen, you can, if you know Jane, you can send them directly to her, but we'll get those back to her if you guys have anything you think might be a good suggestion for that. Thank you, sir. That was the only thing I had. Anyone else? I think that's a no across the board, but just in case. Alrighty. So then I talked about the campaign finance reminder. So it's just open for committee member comments. Does anyone have anything they want to raise? Jamie and Tim, thank you for the one earlier about the COVID testing at Station 3. That's obviously a very key one. Is there anything else that's out there that's top of mind that we want to bring up, since we do have obviously an audience that we can use this pulpit for?
Did Connor bring up the extension of the CARES funding, the CARES Act funding in our last meeting? I think he did at Town Hall.
At Town Hall, I know. I spoke to him briefly about it in the context of, we didn't know before it was finalized about sort of where we were without it, like what the benefit was and some of the concerns that we had. I have not spoken to him about it since, but I can ask him, and if I can get just a quick snapshot as to what the impact is, I can bring them to the next meeting. To be honest, he might be in our next meeting. We never know, so we could actually just probably bother him with it at the same time.
Yeah, I think he's probably going to bring it up at the next time he's in meeting anyway, so I wouldn't make a stretch of it, but sure. I do know it was extended. I don't know the details, so I won't go too far into it, but it was good news that it was extended. So that was another little bit of good news. It was initially supposed to expire on December 31st, I think, and then last minute it was funded through, I believe, the full calendar year for 2021. So that was a bit of good news. But that being said, I'm not sure the details of it, so I'm not sure how much that actually entails. So I'll leave it to our expert porter, Connor Reed, to give that to us when he comes to whichever meeting it is.
Yeah, I'll mention to him just because it was something that was a discussion point, and just say, hey, we'd love to get an impact statement as to what this is. The other thing I feel like, now that you mentioned it, I don't know if I have a good answer for it, is, and I meant to mention it, is the budget memo that I'm not logged in. I'm not in my email. There's the budget memo that Wendy had sent out. Has anyone had a chance to review that? Sharon, did you get that? I don't know if you saw that when it came out. Okay, I'll forward that to you. Let me find it on my phone. Effectively, what Wendy Nightingale does is
December 8th, Patrick.
I'm sorry?
It came out December 8th. That helps.
Yep, I've got it. So she sends out the operating and capital budget instructions and a quick snapshot breakdown of where things stand. It's good to know now what some of the expected pieces are, and then obviously we'll slowly whittle that down as we go forward, as we usually do, for at least the capital side. But that's out there. Shireen, I'll send that on to you so you have it, just so you have that back.
I don't think anybody got it, Patrick, unless we sent it, because it went just to you, and I got it after.
I thought it went to FinCom.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I thought it was
it just went to you in the original, and then I got it after from, I think, Connor.
And here I just thought I was delinquent.
You are.
Yeah, I'm looking through my email thinking I lost it.
So there is a FinCom. I wonder if it just went to the it might just be going to the FinCom distro that I'm essentially listed on. Okay, I'll forward that on. So no one's got it. So we're in even better shape. So it is the capital budget request. It is the budget instructions, etc. It's just a good, similar to the beginning of the annual budget book. This is actually more operative, right? Because this is the current budgets that we're working with and starting to sort of peel back on. So I'll send that out right after this. I think that's everything I had. Is there anything else that anyone else wants to bring up other than the usual, everyone's favorite motion? All right, I will accept a motion to adjourn if anyone has one. Mike.
Motion to adjourn.
There it is. Second?
Second.
All right, let's go down the list. Mimosi.
Mimosi, yes.
Stebbins.
Stebbins, yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Healy.
Yes.
D'Amelio,
Yes.
Diaz,
Diaz, yes.
Stacy.
Stacy, yes.
Yeah, please not here. And then Helen, yes. Thanks, everybody. We are done. We will send out a notification as to when we're expecting the next one. If we need one early February, if we don't have any changes, we might skip one, and we'll see how it goes. I appreciate you all the time.
Thanks, guys.
Great.
Bye.
Good night. Good seeing everyone.